Right. Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. As you might tell from the audio, I'm not in my office, but I felt we should be starting with the podcast as it's the beginning of September. And I have the perfect guest for this. Today's guest is Safak Erkol. She's an entrepreneur and a founder with a background in digital marketing, who was the co-founder and the CMO of Fastbag, it's a grocery delivery app. She was also one of the finalists in the 2021 Great British Entrepreneur Awards. Today, we'll talk about this newly budding space, grocery delivery, as well as Safak's journey as an entrepreneur. Welcome, Safak.
Thanks for having me on, Azan.
So, do you think the grocery delivery space currently with all these players is overly hyped, or is there like a structural change that is disrupting how we consume groceries? What do you think about this?
When it comes to on-demand online grocery delivery, I don't necessarily think it's overhyped, because when you look at the propositions of most of the brands and the emerging players in this market, think on fast delivery, convenience, a very well streamlined, smooth customer and user experience on the app. So customers are definitely the ones that are winning here. So from a customer perspective, I necessarily don't think that it's overhyped. So, and in terms of the investment space, as you might be well aware of it, like huge volumes of investments are in this space, and because the growth of the market also accelerated by lockdown has kind of given the signal that it's not just a hype, but it's kind of like a gradual change in consumer behavior, which is enabled by tech. And I think that's quite a positive thing. I don't necessarily think it's just due to post-pandemic lockdown demand. I think the behavioral change is here to stay from the customer perspective. It might be gradual. Some customers may have already adopted it and made this a part of their weekly shopping even, so kind of on a regular basis. Some of them might just be trying some services because they really have deep promotions in this space. Investors obviously are seeing the potential and they want to get returns. They want to kind of look into scaling very quickly. And most of the companies, most of the brands are doing a good job in scaling. But I think what will define the winners of this landscape will be what the proposition is delivering. So I don't necessarily think it's about whether you deliver in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So it's anything within, and we have also witnessed this with our own proposition in practice. Anything under 30 minutes on a local basis, on a hyper-local basis, is welcomed by the customer, not just welcomed, but loved by the customer and referred to their friends by the customer. So I think what will define the winners will be how the players aggregate, how they bring in other brand attributes to their proposition as well. Just as an example, some of them are focusing on more premium organic products and sustainability. Some of them are making their range very diverse, considering the needs of urban customer. Some of them might be going on the pricing scale and coming up with the propositions of even lower than retail prices and going deep in promotions. So I think what will define the eventual winners of this industry will be how they actually build their propositions after this quick growth period.
That's really interesting. And as a matter of fact, it comes down to a lot of investors have bought into this story that this is the new norm, new user behavior, as proven by the increasing rounds. I just double checked, and of course, Getir is one of the well-known names in this space. It has raised 550 million in the latest investment round.
Yeah,
is now valued at $7.5 billion US dollars, which is quite a lot.
Really impressive.
Let's be honest. And there is some demand in this space, but I think it's very interesting to see how this is going to shape a lot of new players as well as small players.
I totally agree. And I would just add that my perspective on most of these things, also even in some of the marketing approaches, it's not either or. So it's not like it's either overly hyped or it is like, we are only going to shop for groceries online. So I think it's more like both and. Obviously,
I see.
like during the Christmas period, as an example, in the UK, people will be going to store, like, people will be going to Waitrose again. Like, they will not just buy things from online, like,
Because
they
it's
will
an
just not
experience in that sense.
exactly. They will not just find their favorite brands, drinks, or what they need for what they are cooking for dinner just online. They will go and see what Christmas specials are on. They will go and buy the plum pudding. They will go and buy the Christmas specials. So I think it's both and. However, we are also seeing that the in-store, like these brands with heritage, and they're also going through digital transformation. So it's just a matter of everyone kind of going into this digital online realm and kind of coming up with innovations around how they are going to transform on a digital basis. Not every player will be on demand. Not every in-store company will continue growing. So it's just, I think, a hybrid transition.
Building on what you just said, perhaps we can make this conclusion. Those moments which people think about as valuable experiences, they will still be retained in this new reality. As you said, the Christmas shopping, the weekend shopping, and so on, or visiting a new place, combining that with going to see a film and then having something to eat with your friends. So that's definitely going to stay because it's an experience. However, those other moments, the mundane daily reality of tasks and chores, so that's type of the area of utility, I think that's going to be provided by these apps. So there's going to be a new hybrid, it seems. And where does Fastbag, the company you have co-founded and acted as the CMO, fit in this story?
It really, I think, good point to kind of give the story of Fastbag. So last year, during the lockdown, with my co-founder, Aydin Günal, we were looking into the market just as we had a bit of a quick analysis here with you. And like, obviously, we were aware of Getir wasn't in the UK yet, and this kind of investment boom for European on grocery demand and also global hadn't happened yet. Players in US we were aware of, so we kind of looked into the market and saw like what the proposition could be from a very technical and from a technical perspective and from a build perspective. We looked into like building a mobile app, what our service and experience, what our proposition would be, and we just decided that the on-demand grocery delivery would definitely be in demand, and that would be like a really rising market in the UK. However, where our proposition differed, because we were also kind of anticipating entry of bigger players in London, and as you're well aware, London is a huge scope in terms of both the market demand, but also in terms of the budgets. And we were looking to bootstrap and build the app and the experience along with everything operational, including the warehouse and all the operations about the deliveries in just a few months. So we decided that our proposition would be differentiated by being regional. Because you will notice most of the big players are hugely focused in London, obviously. And when it comes to expansion, they are expanding in Birmingham, Manchester, Brighton, like major cities. Whereas there is a gap and there is an underserved market when it comes to not small towns, but kind of mid-level towns in terms of their population and cities that are in the regions like Berkshire, that we were founded, we kind of started our operations in Maidenhead, regions like Buckinghamshire. So like, and the reality is people who have been commuting to major cities from these cities were working from home with their families. Usually grocery shopping is a trip with the family, which is again a chore. Sometimes, like it's just you accept it as life admin that you have to do, but it's a chore without any added value. So we thought we would find the right product market fit, and we actually did just within a few weeks actually in the region. So that was our starting point. And following that,
I'm
Yeah,
really
yeah.
curious about your growth numbers in the first period, but before
Mm-hmm.
we get into that, perhaps it might make sense to talk about how this story has resonated with the investors, or if you had any investors that,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's a big part of building this type of a business.
Definitely, definitely. Because we started our operations first with a kind of a family and friends launch, testing some features on the app and our overall journey. And then we did our launch back in towards the end of February. And we have bootstrapped for this initial location, obviously. But this business, as you might imagine, is all about scaling very quickly. And that is what we were and we are looking to do in the region. So we did a round for seed investors, angel investors, and that round is still continuing to my knowledge. As we, in the meantime, though, we also are expanding in Slough and with an additional store near Maidenhead. But yeah, like that's definitely, we have seen quite an interest from the investors, angel investors, which is still in progress.
That's good to hear. In terms of the growth numbers and the product market fit that you've observed, so which numbers made you go,
So
okay, there's something here?
So what we have witnessed was within a matter of like within the first 2 months, we were able to reach user numbers going up to like 4,000 for the population of Maidenhead and Windsor. That's quite an impressive number. And beyond just the number of users, because this was our kind of awareness period, and like what we also kind of figured into it was like the retention. And as you know, like monthly growth is such a key thing for startups at this scale. What was also an impressive KPI from our perspective was that we had 1 in 3 customers with multiple shops during the week. So that also kind of made us sure of the stickiness of the app and the experience. So I would say those two kind of gave us the motivation to continue the growth journey.
So obviously, but looking at how you're excited by the story, you
Mm-hmm.
still believe in this business to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you have also made the decision, and correct me if I'm wrong, to quit the business
Mm-hmm.
from the
Mm-hmm.
CMO role. So how did you make this decision, and why did you make this decision? And please try to keep in mind there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are building new
Mm-hmm.
partnerships, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
breaking up those partnerships, taking on new roles in startups. So I think there's always something to learn from real stories like yours.
Definitely, definitely. So I would say, I would like to also state, I'm still a shareholder in Fastbag. So what I have, what I have left was my CMO role and my role as a director in the company. And definitely, I still believe in the business. I'm still a participant and involved in the business as a shareholder. I think from my perspective, it was more about maintaining what I had as a vision in terms of not just our product and how it's going to the market, how we are reaching to the investors, but also in terms of like the governance of the company and my values and how we kind of come to terms together along with my co-founder. And in my experience, we had some core changes of opinion and about the governance of the company with my co-founder. So I made the decision that it would be better for the business and also personally for myself to continue this journey just as a shareholder rather than being involved as a director in the company. And this was also, I think, a key part simply because I was responsible for the fundraising, reaching out to investors, having the conversations, showing them our, roadmap, financials. And I thought if I am really not on the same page 100% with my co-founder, that wouldn't be a healthy way to continue the journey with integrity. So that's my journey so far.
Is there a way, is there an alternate universe in which you could have foreseen this? Or rather, let me ask the question in a different way. If you would have the chance to speak with Shafak from 2 or 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm,
before you
mm-hmm.
started this partnership, what would you advise her to consider before jumping into this?
Actually, it's kind of like such things are always in hindsight, right? So
Yeah, hindsight is always 2020.
I would definitely, I'm definitely proud of the journey, and I really appreciate your question, and because I think your question is the right question in terms of thinking about such journeys. So I would say it was my first time as an entrepreneur, and obviously I kind of went by my own like values and planning, whereas like, we were quite driven. We are both like, co-founders with a bias for action. So like, it was very important for me, very essential for me to start this journey, build the app in a lean way, agile way. And knowing my co-founder, like, it's not someone I met in London. I had connections with him. So I also started with trust, like full trust, as I think you should always do. But what I would do, like, in a second journey or in a parallel life, I would also consider, obviously, you always start with trust, you always start with the same understanding and integrity. But maybe I would have kind of made some difficult conversations that we had to do. And I thought that it wasn't best for the governance of the company earlier on at the start of our journey. And really maybe having those kind of checks in terms of our understanding, how the journey is going to shape, like in a more candid way. That is what I could contribute maybe to this journey as far as I see it. But yeah, I was always aware, and this continues to be a recurring theme for me. I think the co-founder, the relationship for anyone listening to this podcast and either in their journey, continuing or planning to, I would say the co-founder partnership is just like any corporate company's employees and any corporate company's people in their strategy. Like, it's the core. Like, as much as your product, it's your essential
core assets for the business.
Asset to build on. Definitely,
that's something. Let me butt in here with my personal perspective. The latest book I had authored was named "Startups Grow with People," and that's something I definitely believe in personally as well. So I think that's a fundamental part of the business in terms of the assets and the competitive advantage is the people. And going back to the previous question in terms of what I learned with different partnerships and what I would recommend for people going into new partnerships is to get an alignment on the core principles that you would run the business by. If you lack the clarity to agree on these principles, and that is often the case if the founders are not very experienced, and then decide on, and this is going to perhaps sound counterintuitive, but it actually makes a lot of sense, decide on the principles on which you would find out what your principles would be. So agree on a method, agree on a way on how you would define the company's principles if you cannot define each principle by its own.
I totally agree. And I would also add, so in terms of our relationship as an example, like, or our partnership, there was clarity, there was alignment. I would also say be totally ready every other day with any other factor or criteria in your business development. Things are likely to change. Some dynamics will change. Your investor dynamics, your growth dynamics will change. Your partnership dynamics will change. So I think I would also say be ready for uncertainty. Be ready for difficult conversations. It's always great to build this company, have this passion, and continue having your journey. Those are the best moments, but also be ready for difficult moments and what your guiding principles and what your guiding values will be for such conversations, I would say.
Safak, what do you think the experience of a migrant entrepreneur in the UK is like?
I would say I kind of see this with a growth mindset. I view it as something that you can build with your strengths rather than kind of seeing yourself, oh, maybe I am less privileged because I am still adapting to the culture of this country. And like, that might kind of make you think, oh, anything from investors to understanding the consumers. I have more to do. I have like things that I need to improve on, but I kind of view it the other way. I think focusing on your strengths, focusing on what you can bring from your diverse culture, from your diverse background, even on a product and service basis. Like, you might have noticed the consumer demand in your country, and maybe it is being customers are solving that job with a certain product, but in this country, maybe things are different. So how can you integrate and introduce innovation? So I think it's kind of a journey where it all depends on your vision and your mindset. I would definitely emphasize the need for building a network, a community, because those will be the people that you are going to build your experience on, that you're going to do your soul searching with, come with your questions, and even have mentorship with. So I would say building on your strengths is a great way, and definitely make sure that you're kind of nurturing, building a network that you can call your own.
In terms of your experience and your observations, how do you think the entrepreneurial startup ecosystem or the landscape in the UK is different than the US or different than the rest of Europe?
I have to say my first entrepreneurship experience has been in the UK, and also I've consulted and worked for startups, high growth startups or scale ups in the UK. So I don't have extensive experience in the US or in Europe as a practitioner, but I have been observing and I have been very closely watching and networking with startup communities for more than a decade maybe. And I would say UK has great opportunities. There is some cultural, I think in terms of how I see US as being a bit more aggressive, ambition in numbers, and kind of you can see, whereas UK has this approach of kind of mitigating the risks and still trying to find a balance between, even as a small company, the caring for people and actually targets focus on things rather than sales and revenue. So kind of more what the heritage of this company will be, which is not a good or bad thing. I think it's just a difference in approach. But I would say the interaction between UK and Europe is quite exciting and quite impressive, because I think more and more companies, whether Brexit or not, people in the UK work for European startups. European startups are interaction with UK consumers, UK partnerships on a B2B basis. So I think there is a lot to explore in the UK-Europe front beyond US.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground in this chat, and so we talked about your background in digital marketing, your co-founder journey as the CMO of Fastbag, the newly budding space of grocery delivery, the migrant entrepreneurship, how to quit. So my final question to you will be this: in the future, do you plan to be a part of, as a co-founder or in a different role, a new startup, a new entrepreneurial journey? Is that in the horizon?
I would say so, because it was quite rewarding, quite exciting to do my first time stint as an entrepreneur and co-founder. And it actually also informed me by my experience that there is so many transferable skills. Anyone who worked in corporate before, anyone who worked for a small business, who was supporting a family business. So sometimes I think people might have this imposter syndrome of, but I have never done that before. So whereas I actually noticed that if you have a bias for action, if you're passionate, if you have a mission, it's definitely something you can thrive in, not just survive, but thrive in. So for myself, I'm also thinking it could be another co-founder journey. It can be a side hustle. So I'm kind of leaving that open, because in the world that we are living in, it's more about discovering those potentials and the timing and the relevancy of it. But yeah, I kind of have the feeling that I will continue my journey. And I would also like to add, as much as I referenced with that comment, I am now also in connection, in part of many networks of startups, budding co-founders, people who are looking to co-found companies. So I so much value in mentoring and getting mentorship in those networks. So I would also suggest for anyone who is interested in the space, getting connected and hearing journeys of others, just like you're doing with this podcast, is a great way to start.
And we also have the community, the Startups of London community. If they can search our website, I'm sure people will find it. We are not very active there, unfortunately. It's something we have to fix. But we are building the platform, and it's going to be more active soon. So perhaps we will have you there as a guest as well, Safak.
Well, I am looking forward to it if you continue improving the platform on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this chat. It was a delight. And I wish you the best.
Likewise, Ozan. Likewise, Ozan. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.